Hello everyone and welcome to the second part of the Europe streak. So last time we left it at 50. If you haven't watched that video, I'll leave it in the description. This is important because some references that I will be making in the commentary of this video will refer to locations that I've seen in the last video. So make sure that you watch that. So I hope you enjoy the gameplay and the commentary, and let's see if I can reclaim that record. So for this one, there's the Italian no parking sign, and that font style in the numbers is also Italian. On the other side, that short plate with double blue is also exclusively Italian, so no doubt this has to be Italy. Here I first thought that we had the Spanish firefighters one, but we have short dashes on the side of the road, which is not common in Spain, and there's a sign mentioning Corsica there. The plate on the van had a slight double blue, which is faded there, and the sign had a thick white border and some French written below. So at this point I was pretty confident where we were. Here we have a blurred out blue sign, which is a common feature of Lithuania. And this orange board is also characteristic of Lithuania only. And that messy pole over there with curvy bulbs is one of those found in this country. This was heavily forested, so I went east, but it ended up being much more west than I thought. So this round offered a small town. That car there had a long double blue plate. I couldn't be assured that that plate on the van far away had a red border, but I thought so, which is found usually only in Albania. And when I read the language, I was convinced that it was Albanian. And as you can see in this example, the roofs are flatter than in Montenegro and the houses look more like Greek ones, and some having even balconies. It was the outskirts of Tirana. And here we had one traditional Russian wooden house again in the distance, and also what seemed to be a Russian Orthodox church. The plate of the car was also completely white. And here you can see some more Russian architecture in a state of disrepair. I went close to Moscow because it looked quite generic. It was more southeast. On this one we can see the three-dimensional Ukrainian board again. The poles looked much simpler than you sometimes see in Russia. We also had again the pretty well kept wheat field and some poplar trees over here. So it had to be Ukraine, and with the yellow wheat field it had to be southern Ukraine. Now we can see some hedgerows on the side of the road. This is Gem 4 coverage, and that house there looked pretty similar to the Irish one we saw before, and there's no yellow backplate on the car there. And another useful tip I can give you is that if you see grass in the middle of small roads, Ireland becomes much more likely than the UK. Here we have the Swedish direction sign I described before. There's also short dashes on the side of the road, and that yellow speed sign can be found in Sweden or Finland, but it's typically thicker in Finland. I went central again because of those pines. So at first glance this seemed to be a hard round with the dirt road, but that hollow pole with the holes not reaching the top that I mentioned before to be common in Poland, and those houses with red roofs are all typical of this country. So this made me more confident. And I saw these birches and I thought that it would probably be closer to the Baltics. So that's where I went, to the northeast of Poland, but it was just central. Here we have Cyrillic. The plate is completely white and the yellow border on the crossing sign is again visible. I thought that was a red car for a moment, but it was not. It was actually a black car. And finally, those white and black pole strips are very rare and I've only seen them in Russia. So at first glance this looked Italian because small roads with white lines on both sides are very common in Italy, and we could see also that single white on black arrow found in Italy, Greece or Albania. The shutters here that we saw before are also present, and the green shutters are a feature that is almost exclusive of Italy. The walls on the side of the road is another common feature of mountain villages in Italy. And those mirrors on curves can also be found here. At the end with the dark roofs I went close to Slovenia, but it ended up being much more west. Round 62 turned out to be the hardest round of all of the streak for me. I first thought that a narrow path in a semi-forested environment like this looked like very Swedish. However, I was unsure about those wooden houses as they didn't look very Nordic. The west side did not look Nordic at all, and those spring leaves reminded me a bit of Slovakia, which is full of spring coverage. I was desperate, searching for more confirmation clues. However, for some time I was unlucky. But I thought that this metal building over here is more appropriate for Slovakia. That the state of that main road also looked much more Slovakian than Swedish. And as you can see, I was still a bit unsure at this point, but I was already tilting towards Slovakia. At the end, I decided that the metal building, the trees, and the main road are too strong clues to ignore. Especially after seeing that main road again, I decided to go for Slovakia. and it ended up being in Slovakia. On this one we had a double white line, and one of the lines becomes dotted, which is usually in Poland. We can also see a W on the track, and the cross there is very common in Poland because it's a very religious country. I tried out to figure out the board, but I couldn't find out if it was red or not, and I ended up going Central Poland because of the cornfields. In this one we have extremely short dashes on the side of the road and an extremely dry landscape too. That sign was in Romanian and even said Romania on the left. That was a thick hollow pole there too, with a painted bottom. And I went Transylvania because of the rolling hills, and I was right. Here my first thought was Bulgaria because it was winter coverage and the road was pretty poor, but with the amount of spruces and larches over here and that wooden house, I thought that Slovakia could be a better match. Also the poles matched a bit better, and there was a white car with a long antenna which is also seen in Slovakia but not in Bulgaria. So I panned around for a bit to make sure that it was really Slovakia, and at the end I was quite close, only 31 kilometers away. Here we had some Mediterranean landscape with olive trees. Those wooden poles everywhere made Greece the most likely option, and that bay to the south also confirmed that. And on the sign I could recognize a Greek gamma letter. The hills there were also quite rocky, so I ended up going for quite southern Greece. It was a bit more north, but still okay. With this one I saw Carrera again, which is street in Catalan. That stone house resembled Andorra very much, but it couldn't be because we had EU plates everywhere. And I ended up going Catalonia close to Andorra, and it was actually close to France. This one was fairly easy. Norway, with the Nordic architecture and the yellow middle line. And there was also a Norwegian flag on the other side. On this one we had the front of the Danish bollard with this time a yellow trapezium below the red strip. And these vertical close together dashes are also common in Denmark. And with the denser vegetation I went Giant, and it was correct. So this was round 70 to time my personal best. And then that sign I saw Lovchen, which is a national park in Montenegro. The dry Western Balkan hills also found in the south of the country, so that matched. And to the south I saw what seemed to be the Bay of Kotor. At first glance, I thought about pinpointing, but after some seconds I decided that there was no point in doing it anymore. And I was just not looking in the right area anyway. So this was to beat my personal best. It was quite an easy round. Slow was written on the ground and it was left driving. That small speed sign on the left matched the UK too. That brick house with chimney and those small windows was stereotypically British. There was also the British version of the short spaces between dashes. And this looked a bit like a rich neighborhood, so I went Surrey and it was actually there. Here we had another suburban location. We had Mediterranean-style houses and what seemed to be villas, meaning that it's a resort town. The thick red border there confirmed it was Spain. Those lampposts I've also seen a lot in Spain in real life. With the sea to the south and the exclusive nature of these villas, I was already at this point thinking that it would be Marbella. That's where I went, and it was actually surprisingly there. Here we actually have the red on the plate you see in Albania, and this time there's a rift there. To me this looked a bit like a poor area of a big city, so I went Tirana because it was also flat, and it was actually the other flat city, which is Durres. This one was really important because getting it would mean reclaiming the record. This was a flat northwestern European area. There was no red font on the plate, making Belgium unlikely, and on this side we could see the curved sign holder and the AE letter that only exists in Danish. So I went for Denmark. And yes, we had the record. Here I was trying to recognize a top-level domain. I could find out it ended with K, but with the board I confirmed that it was SK. The language, which was Slavic and had a lot of accents, also matched. And as you can see in Slovakia, there's no thick border on signs like in Czechia. This one was another one I spent a lot of time on. It looked extremely dry and Mediterranean. The pole was wooden, which made Greece more likely, but Italy was still possible. But the lack of double solid lines that are found in Greek roads, and especially that short plate, questioned my intuition. But those flat terracotta roofs there still looked more Greek than Italian. The dry and hilly landscape also supported this, as well as the amount of wooden poles everywhere. I panned around for a long time seeking another clue. I clicked Sardinia here because I thought that if it was Italy, it was the only part that would be fitting with this type of landscape. But to confirm, I still was looking around, seeking for the smallest detail that would make the difference. And finally, I found that house which had a shape that looked more Greek to me. And after that, I went for Greece. And it was correct, it was northern Greece. And this one has the extremely short dashes on the side that we saw in Romania before, and there's a hollow pole over there to the right. Those red roofs are typically found either towards the north of Romania or in hilly areas like this one. At the end I went towards the north in a hilly area, but as you can see it was just a hilly area. Here on this round I got bamboozled at the start because I read Crédito Cooperativo, which to me was Spanish. However, when I saw the double blue I assumed that it meant the same thing in Italian. The architecture was also significantly much more Italian with those shutters. And I went South Calabria because it looked a bit like a disadvantaged area, and I was close. Here we have a French D road marker. There is also this thick French board, but this time it's with a red strip, not a grey strip. And with those terracotta roofs and light buildings, I went west again. Here we started with those generic Alpine and Balkan bollards in a quite forested area in the mountains. These bollards were not Austrian because there was not a grey back there, and that sign decided it because it's a kilometer marker that is specific to Slovenia. And it was actually much more south. So this time we did have the Greek double white lines. We had those terracotta roofs again, as well as some olives. The poles were once again wooden, and I could read some Greek there and there too. So this was a pretty easy relocation. I went east because of the east coast, and it ended up being close to Volos. This looked again like a Central European town in Gem4 coverage. We had a thick white border on that sign that suggested Czechia. That blue sign also had the thick border. And as it was a bit hilly, I decided to go towards the east, and it was pretty close. This one was quite a weird location. I could not interpret that street sign very well. But if you see a short road sign close to the floor, like that one, you're usually in France. And with those planted pines and the amount of deforestation I had already in mind the national park south of Bordeaux, and that's where I went, and it was just south of where I went. Here we can finally see the bollard found in Italy and Albania, but this was Italy because of the architecture and the Gem 4. That there were the blue Italian signs again. I could make out a short blade there, and as this was completely flat, I guessed the Po Valley, and it was very close. On this one we have that pale yellow duplex, and some more to the north, which is typical of Malta, and that square EU plate is unique to Malta, so there was no question here. And here, after just less than an hour, comes the bust. This was a silly round to lose on because I believe that others like the Slovakia round were much harder than this. Here we had a narrow mountain path. This was filmed in autumn, which made me think of Croatia first, which matched with the rocky hills in the background and the houses with the orange roofs. However, we had a long antenna which is not found in Croatia. Croatia has the short antenna we had before, and that made me consider Italy, which does have that antenna. But I stupidly couldn't remember autumn coverage in Italy at all, although it does exist, and those hills and especially the houses seemed alien to me. I looked around to see if there was any other clues I could use to decide this, but I finally made the questionable decision of using the environment instead of the meta, and I paid for that rookie mistake because it was in central Italy. So after that stupid mistake that prevented me from achieving further milestones such as the 100 streak, I want to thank you all for watching and make sure you like, subscribe, and see you next time. Bye.